record, and I'm going to go live on custom, and I'm going to got it, and I'm going to open this up. Come on, and I'm going to share it. I missed a step, Randy, but it's okay. I think we're live on, hey, you're on live with Randy and Teddy on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. And our special guest today is Sara Rosinsky. Sara is back for a second show with us because she has not stopped talking about us since we did the last show. I think she was talking about us and all good stuff. But anyway, Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy is sponsored in part by the Elder Law Firm out of Greensboro, North Carolina. Elder Law Firm cares about helping you take care of your commitments to your loved ones. So if you need to have a conversation with someone about elder law, elder care planning, retirement planning, reach out to the Elder Law Firm in Greensboro, North Carolina, 336-396-4551, and let them know that Randy sent you. So Sara, good to have you on here today. Give us, Randy and I, a minute to figure out what we're doing and make sure this is all working. And Randy, you stop looking at the screen. That means, is it working?
Yeah, we are fully operational on this end of the spectrum, Teddy. So yeah, thanks folks for joining us once again. Randy Wooden with Goodwill Industries of Northwest North Carolina, based out of Winston-Salem, but I have clients across the country. So if you or maybe somebody you know, you're in a job search, maybe employed and looking, or unemployed and looking, either way, doesn't matter. Our services are free, and so we're happy to try to help get you on the calendar. Find me on LinkedIn or reach out after the show, and we'll get you on the calendar, like I said. But a couple of times a week, I get together with Teddy Burriss, against my better judgment, but I've been doing it for so long now. You feel like family, Teddy. So I never had a brother. I never had a sibling. I do now. It's you. So you're stuck.
Big brother. So you mind your P's and Q's when you're talking to me.
Yeah, that's right. It's harder and harder to. I like to show respect to my elders, and it's harder and harder to find elders at my age. But thankfully, Teddy, you're here, young fella. But Sara Rosinsky rejoins us. Sara, you were here a year or two ago, and before I forget, I have your book right here. This is awesome. Love it. And we're going to talk Unflubbify Your Writing. Sara Rosinsky from Colorado is here. She is the owner of Shiny Red Copy, and you're a copywriter and used to be a stand-up comedian. So you're going to fit in just great right here today. And Sara,
actually, she'll be better than fit in, Randy. She will help us out.
I like that. We appreciate the help. So we're going to dive into, and I'll have Sara introduce herself here in a bit. But Teddy,
let's make sure the world. I mean, Randy, we got 10,000 people on the show. There's at least 3 people that don't know you or I well enough, and so I think you've introduced yourself in your role as Mr. Goodwill Professional Center. Those who've never met me, I'm Teddy. Okay. I'm a LinkedIn strategist, trainer, and coach. I work for a company called Burriss Consulting, which is owned by my wife in part. And love helping people learn how to use LinkedIn. And Google Workspace is our new division that we're launching in 2022 to be full in gear in 2023. But every week, Randy and I get together, and the most important thing we can do is get past all this chatter that we do and get to the conversation with our special guests. So Randy, take it back, buddy.
Yeah, and if you have comments or questions for Sara, please put those in the chat area, and Teddy's going to keep an eye. He's going to keep an eye on that. But I don't care where we are in our career or how educated or whatever we feel we are, the English language can be very, very, very tricky. And we're going to get knee deep into some of the common mistakes that people make. Because look, I think as we know more, we know better, we can do better. And it doesn't mean we're dumb if we don't know. It just means maybe we've just never known that there was a difference. And so Sara Rosinsky is going to join us now and talk a little bit more to help get us squared away so we can put our best foot forward. So Sara, if you don't mind, would you introduce yourself in a little more detail? And I'm going to ask you the why question after that.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me begin by saying thank you to both of you for having me here.
You bet.
And if I were to introduce myself, I would tell you that I have been a copywriter, which means I write advertising primarily for businesses. I have been a copywriter since I was basically fresh out of college. I got my first copywriting job by advertising. Importantly, I did not have a job immediately upon graduation. So I hung up signs all over Boston's Back Bay that said I was available to do whatever kind of work you needed.
Were these on Main Street, Sarah, or in alleys?
No, this was on Newbury Street, Mass Ave.
Oh, okay.
All over the place. And sure enough, a Newbury Street advertising agency called me at a certain point. They really needed someone to answer the phones and type up their invoices, but it was a small enough agency that I got to learn on the job. And once I became a copywriter, I've never wanted to do anything else. I love it. And now I'm doing it for myself with Shiny Red Copy. I am my own boss. And I am living the dream.
Yeah. Always ask the why question. So I gather you have at least a passing interest in writing. Yeah. So did that start as a kid, before college? When did you get the bug to say, this is what I want to be doing?
I certainly got positive reinforcement from my parents, who probably gave me positive reinforcement for everything, but I do remember that they liked my writing. And I believe I got that positive reinforcement through college as well. I sort of, even though I was a history major, I started to be kind of funny in my essays, and so I was enjoying it quite a bit. I've never wanted to be a novelist. I don't believe I have what it takes, but advertising lets me be as playful, imaginative, and creative as I want to be and make money at it. So. Yeah.
Also, again, if you have comments or questions for Sara, put those in the chat area. Again, her book is Unflubbify Your Writing. I didn't see any photos and I didn't see any pictures in here.
There's a photo.
Is there a photo in there?
Taken by Jim Darling.
Oh, okay. Like Goose on the Loose. I see a goose. So there's that as a drawing.
There's some drawings. So here I am. There I am. There's a bio.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, but yeah, the book is really cool because this has a lot of the stuff that I think we all wrestle with, and maybe even unknowingly, we don't know and or don't care and just put it down there and go, well, it's good enough. But the difference between good enough, what is that? There's a commercial, isn't there, that said good, well, it's good enough, and and bad things happen if it ain't right. So we're going to dive into a number of topics today, but one of the first ones I know that you wanted to talk about was common errors. What are some of the most common mistakes that people make? Randy, I buy picture books. I do. Yeah, I like picture books. But hey, we all make them. But what are some of the top 5 or so you can think of that come to mind and say, hey, you know what? This is stuff. If you can knock these out, you're going to be on your way.
There are lots of errors that so many people get wrong. No one will probably notice that you're making a mistake. There are other errors that will get noticed and will make people cringe. I believe you mentioned one earlier that I think is among the most common. It is the solid word every day.
Okay.
And then the 2 words every day. And I see this error most often on businesses who say that they're open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day. And the word every day, one word, solid, is actually an adjective that means something like ordinary. You have everyday dishes, you have everyday sneakers. It's just an adjective.
Like my everyday beer.
Exactly. Well, yes, that would be correct. But if you told people that you enjoy at least one beer every day, that's 2 words. And the way I tell people to remember that is that you could stick an adjective in between the word every and day. And you could say, I like to drink a beer with breakfast every single day. That's how you know it's 2 words.
Okay. Every single day. So, or days that end in Y.
Sure.
That works for Teddy. That works for Teddy as well. What are some other ones? That's a good one. And I've got to think that the Teddy and me, that one, I hear that a lot. And help us understand what that one means.
This one is difficult to undo because I believe it is rooted in our mothers. When we were children, we would eagerly come into the house covered in mud and say, Teddy and me went down to the river and dug up, snakes, and Teddy and me did this. And our mothers would say, Teddy and I dug up snakes.
Right.
She was correct when she did that, but that doesn't mean you always want to say Teddy and I. There's a difference between the subject of a sentence, which is I love, unflubbify your writing, or an object, which is my dog loves me, and would never say my dog loves I, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to pay attention to whether you're doing the action or having the action done to you. Mm-hmm. These sentences are correct. Teddy and I took a hike on a glacier, but an avalanche landed on Teddy and me. It is helpful to remove that other person from the sentence. If we took Teddy out, you would say an avalanche fell on me. You'd never say an avalanche fell on I, right. Ever. You know that. So just take that other person out of the sentence and see if it makes sense. I hear people use I as an object of the action every day, and often very educated. And it goes unnoticed largely, but the people who know the difference all cringe.
I was gonna say, you cringe, or do you just say a small prayer for them?
Well, it's so understandable, and if it feels awkward to you, if it's just anathema to say that, you could change the sentence, if you need to, if you just can't bring yourself to do it.
Now, I'll tell you, one of the things I really like, Teddy, about Sara is that, and I see you on LinkedIn all the time, and you are not the grammar police or the spelling police, and I see this in letters to the editors. Matter of fact, in the newspaper today, and in the last several days, demeaning people like you're stupid because you don't understand what this means, and therefore because I'm smarter than you are, I'm correct and you're wrong. But this is not the thing. You're a hoot, man. I'm telling you, used to be a stand-up comedian, I think, for a hot minute, didn't you? Yeah. So you do this with a smile and say, hey, look, you know what? You can have fun with this kind of stuff and learn at the same time. And that's our goal here today, is to have a little fun along the way and hopefully brush up on a few things that maybe we just never really thought through. There was something that was used earlier. Teddy, what you want to?
I want to get to a question, but go ahead. You wrap that one up.
Yep. If and whether. One of the two of you used if or whether. And I wonder whether this is proper. If it rains, I'll bring an umbrella. So the if and the whether, do people get that mixed up?
People ask me about that. It is something I don't think about when I say it. Mm-hmm. So I don't have a pithy, perfect explanation of it. I just know when it's right.
I do.
Tell me. Tell me.
If you can say whether or not, right. I wonder whether I'll win the lottery tomorrow. Oh. Well, I wonder whether or not I'll win the lottery. You don't say if or not it rains, I'll bring my umbrella. You say, if it rains, I'll bring my umbrella. So if you can put or not, then it's whether.
I will tell you a tangential lesson to something you just said, though.
Tangential? I'm going to write that down.
That's a big word for you.
What does that mean, Teddy?
We're going to go off on a tangent, but it's related to what you just said.
Love it.
This is something that a lot of people don't understand, and it's called the subjunctive voice. If I were a rich man, have you heard that song? If I were a rich man, da, da, da. So the were means it's not the truth. It's a fantasy. It's a dream. So that if and were often are paired. So if I were a millionaire, if I were your wife, if I were, so instead of if I was.
Yeah, again, that when people say if I were, it sounds kind of hoity-toity, but it's actually correct.
Almost always.
Almost always.
Sure.
Teddy, you had one you want to throw in there, right?
Well, a couple of them here. I'll tell you the one word that I see used so often, and which makes me cringe is when people say, hey, I'm glad you're here. I wanted to tell you something.
Oh, something bothers you?
No, the wanted.
Oh, I wanted to tell you something that
Well,
bothers
you're
you?
right here. I mean, I want to, in the right statement, I want to tell you something.
I'm gonna push back a little bit.
Oh, I'll take it.
Teddy, I got to put you on hold here. You guys carry on. I've got a knock at my palatial estate here.
Okay,
I don't know
I
what
got
it is.
this covered.
Might be the law. You never know.
I think there is a subtle distinction in that sentence. That person is saying, I wanted, this is where you get into English tenses, and it's so subtle, but that person is saying, I'm so lucky, I'm so happy now to see you because I wanted all morning the opportunity to talk to you. It's sort of painting a setting that's existed for longer than this.
I get it. I'm with you, Sarah, I'm with you. But it's when they don't put that condition around it.
Yeah.
You know, dear Teddy, I wanted to tell you something. You've seen these in emails all the time. Dear, dear Sarah, I wanted to tell you something. No, I want to tell you something. That's what gets me so fired up.
All right, I just wanted to tell you something. Even
I've caught myself doing that simply because a little bit, and what I do, I go back and forth. Could I be more direct? And sometimes especially when you begin an email, it can almost feel too forward. It can almost feel, and so I would say to people, when you write, try to make it as brief and to the point as you possibly can. But then if you find yourself saying, no, that just feels too abrupt and too in your face, just think about it. It's totally valid what you're saying, but sometimes we have these little habits where we're sort of easing someone into an idea.
My wife says, leave it alone. You're getting too bent out of shape. All right, here's Dale asked the question, Sarah. Does Sarah have a blunt opinion? This is not the way he scripted it, but it's the way I'm going to share it. Does Sarah have a blunt opinion of the Oxford comma?
I have an opinion. People get very worked up about the Oxford comma.
What is that, first of all? Because maybe people don't know. Okay.
I'm just going to tell you that there is fire around that topic, as is there is two spaces or one after a period. You will find fist fights about these things. But the Oxford comma or the serial comma is the comma that precedes the word and or in a series. So it would be, I love chocolate, comma, wine, comma, and caramels. That was the serial comma, that final comma. I like it because I believe that it lends clarity, which is always my goal. There was a time in a newspaper when you were dealing with space constrictions, ink constrictions. There was a benefit to leaving it out because people could figure it out. I don't feel like there's really any benefit anymore to leaving that out. Make it easier on your reader. There are very rare circumstances where it might cause a problem, 1 in a million. So I almost always, a serial or an Oxford comma are a great way to lend clarity.
Yeah. I'm not sure how you impacted Dean just now, but he just commented, if I were 6'2" and looks like Brad Pitt, I can put this on my Tinder. I have no idea where he came up with that thought based on our conversation, but I'm going to just say kudos to Dean. Back to you guys.
So Van and Then, it's another one that somebody was wondering about. Van and Then.
I have a mnemonic, which means a memory trick in my book for how to keep one straight with the other. I believe the mnemonic, if I remember correctly, the word then has to do with time. So you're often talking about a sequence of events. First, I took a shower, then I ran for president, whatever. Then means the next thing. I believe my mnemonic might be equating the E at the end of the word time with then, so you can remember if it's time, it's E. Then is when you're doing a comparison. I'd rather eat glass than eat dinner with you,
Wait a minute, has that ever been uttered?
No, just,
Now, the
Anyway.
right line would be, Teddy, that's a story for another day, but that's okay.
There
So
was nothing
then, yeah.
personal. There's nothing personal. I'm just saying, I think one of the examples I have in the book is he has more arrest warrants than teeth.
Oh, that's bad. Yeah.
Thus, I'd rather eat glass than go out with you. I'm sorry, sir. Stop it. You two take it back.
I'm sure there are other ones. In fact, I could just do one of these blind, kind of open it up and look at, should have or should have. That's a common one. Not shoulda.
Shoulda,
Or even,
Shoulda,
I
woulda,
could
coulda.
say shoulda, woulda, coulda, but the of instead of have. I should have done that. So how do we know not to say of?
That is like many mistakes, that is a problem that arises because of the way we pronounce those words.
Okay.
It's you generally pronounce them, should have, would have, could have, it's a contraction, it's mushed together. But really what you're saying is should have or would have. I think in that mnemonic, I say you have to use have. You have to use the word have. So that's just, you could turn it into a contraction, SHOULD apostrophe E, but what you're really saying is should have. It is not the word of.
Hey, folks, we have a lot of things we could cover here, things we get tripped up on. And so if you're watching and you've got a few of those, you want to put them in the chat. Teddy, he has more hair than money.
Yeah, Dean is he's stuck on this. I'm not sure, but we'll help him through this eventually.
How about me and myself? And me.
So
it belongs to myself.
yes. This is a common issue because of something called hypercorrection. That is a solid word that you can find in Wikipedia.
All right.
And that is this well-intentioned problem that people have where they're trying to sound a little more educated or a little fancier than the occasion calls for.
Dang Skippy.
Pardon me?
Dang Skippy. No,
that's a North Carolinian linguistic twist on words.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Like Shazam.
Almost always the word myself, it is generally unnecessary. People will, especially in corporate settings, they will say, give the memo to Sharonda and myself. No need, just and me. Myself is correctly used for reflexive words. I starved myself. I beat myself up. I love myself.
Is that 2-word though, or is that a combo word?
1 word.
That's a solid word. Myself, 1 word. But it's really always it's a reflexive.
I got you.
I think another example, another correct use of it is when you're proud of something you've accomplished and you say, I painted my car myself. That's correct. Yeah. But usually if you're doing it as an object that someone, when someone else is doing something to you, you can just say me. Me is not a dirty word, is what I like to say. People think
not used correctly. All right, here's another one that can start lots of fights, Sarah.
Well, good. I'm ready.
Yeah. Who and whom? When should you use either?
Again, hypercorrection makes this problematic. People will whip out the word whom when they are trying to sound educated or fancy, often, and that is often unnecessary. Whom is, again, we're getting into the subject and the object. If it's a subject, who ate my truffles? Who is doing the action? Let me just think about it. To whom should I send this bomb? Or, to whom should I direct this complaint? Or that's an object, right? Something's happening toward it or toward them or to them. So someone the other day on LinkedIn said that she remembers the phrase "to whom it may concern," which is correct. To, you know, to the person that this letter may concern. It's an object again. So that is correct. You may have heard, "Who may I say is calling?" That's the big, you know, that's an, anyway. I want to give this advice though. When in doubt, go with who.
Yeah.
Whom can sound so stuffy and uptight that you're, even if it's correct, you're going to sound kind of uptight.
And what aggravates me is Grammarly smacks me all the time to use whom.
Right.
And I want to find a checkbox in Grammarly that says, leave me alone.
Yes, yes. And that's such a subtle thing, really. Some of these things are just a tone issue. I often make mistakes on purpose because of the way I want something to sound. So you have to know the rules so that you can break them. And I do kind of recommend you be careful with the word whom.
Yeah. We've got a couple minutes before we hit our half-hour break. So Teddy's going to get that ready. How about that and which? That and which.
So this gets into some fancy grammar talk, restrictive clauses and non-restrictive clauses. But let's see if I can. This also gets into punctuation, so it's a little difficult without a whiteboard to explain this. But you're basically differentiating between phrases that you could pull out of a sentence with no harm done or phrases that need to stay in there. Okay. So here is an example. I put the goblet that had the poison in it next to his plate. That phrase about the poison is really important to that. We got to keep that in there. So there are no commas and we use the word that. If it is a phrase like, this pair of pants, comma, which I bought in middle school, comma, do not fit me anymore. You could take that phrase out. You could say this pair of pants
don't fit.
Don't fit me anymore. Yeah. That was more of an aside, right? That little, so I almost think of it as a wrapped, it's wrapped with those commas and it's just a little chunk that you could take out. So the commas and the which are something removable, and that is important.
I often, when I get in an argument with Grammarly, which happens a lot, I completely rewrite the sentence.
You should turn Grammarly off, it sounds like. You have that power.
Thank you.
You could say, yes, that English program, comma, which I would like to remove from my computer is named, comma, is named Grammarly. Anyway.
So, yeah, but Sarah, I'm gonna cue this question up that Scott dropped in a minute, but can you talk, you and Randy chat a little bit about why is this such a big deal? And I'm gonna set up the question, and I don't really want to do that. Let's just go with why is this such a big deal?
And I am happy to answer that question. You're setting it up. Are we stopping for a second, or do you want me to launch in?
We're about halfway through. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and do it. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Hey, you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy, and our special guest, Sara Rosinsky, knows how the show works. And I just want to let you know that Lunch Conversations is sponsored in part by the elder law firm out of Greensboro, North Carolina. Their phone number, write this down if you have elderly parents or other people in your life that are elderly you want to help with. Their number is 336-396-4551. Who's important to you and how you plan to honor your responsibilities for them is important to the elder law firm as well. So you have people in your life who need elder care planning, need estate planning, need help to get those 7 documents. Look, I'm in your face to remind you those 7 documents put together. Then you need to reach out to the elder law firm for help. There again, their number is 336-396-4551. And when you call them, you let them know that Randy told you to call. Yeah.
Yep. Unflubbify your writing. Sara Rosinsky of Shiny Red Copy is also an author. And so if you're curious about how to use proper wording in your cover letters, emails, and in your everyday talk, then Sara is an expert on that. So having teed that up, let's move on. We'll pivot a little bit from some of the troublesome words and talk a little bit. You mentioned maybe some advice you might give to somebody who's thinking about writing a cover letter or maybe a request to connect on LinkedIn. So what are some guidelines for that?
I think your best bet with any kind of professional writing is to keep it simple. You don't have to show off. I think it's human nature to try to sound elite or super smart.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel fine about using short, direct sentences. You can also feel fine about being a human being and being friendly and honest. That's my advice for writing. I just think that as soon as you use the word resume or cover letter, people just turn into kind of robots. These positions were performed by me in a capacity of, and you really just don't have to do that. Think about your reader, think about what you want to read, and you want something that is refreshingly easy to comprehend, direct, straightforward. It's a breath of fresh air, even a little bit irreverent if you want to be. You are a person and you should represent yourself that way. So my biggest advice is just don't tie yourself up in fanciness.
Yeah, sometimes simpler is better, again, without sounding terse or abrupt or anything like that. And to your point, you said, hey, remember your reader is a human being.
Yeah.
They're not a robot.
They have to read a lot of garbage, give them a break. And as a copywriter, I capitalize on that. I will directly say, I think on my own resume, I don't know if you've seen it, but I have a huge headline that says resume schmesume. It's very irreverent. And I believe the first sentence of it is, you want to know if I can write well or something like that. That's what my reader cares about. And so I just launched into that. And that's, kind of bracing and different. And maybe it's not for everybody, but I can promise you that when creative directors read that, they kind of go, oh.
I don't see your resume online, Sara. I'll have to hunt that down to read it.
It's on my website, I think.
Yeah. Your LinkedIn headline could say that too. You could just be that,
I could. Yep. Yeah, I have because LinkedIn has certain parameters where you have to say, I did this thing from this year to this year. It sort of is a little bit restrictive, but on my own, I do have something called resume schmesume.
Ignore the guidance of the big machines.
Teddy, we're going to learn something right now. What is parallel writing and why you need it on your resume? Parallel writing. What does that mean?
So, first of all, I have to say, as a word and typography nerd, I love the way that the word parallel has 2 L's in it that are parallel to one another. So, and I sometimes play with that, but
Sara, you need to get out more. I'm telling you, you need to get out more.
You can't stop me from loving this. I'm sorry. Parallel writing. Parallel writing is, again, it's a gift to your reader. You are making life easier for your reader. It's a little bit of a challenge for you as a writer, but not a terrible lift. It's not a terrible challenge. Okay. This is often necessary when we have bullet points or a resume where you're listing several facts. If those facts are parallel, they will all be framed and they will begin the same way. I'm going to give you an example. This is parallel. My dog, I shouldn't say these words. If he hears this, he'll get excited. My dog likes, and then a bullet point, treats, belly rubs, walks, right? Those are all the same. Those are all just nouns. Those are things he likes. But I might say my dog likes going for walks, eating treats, right? And those are all beginning with an ing word. You need to make sure that each one is behaving the same way. And that just makes it so much easier when you're reading. And that's a common error on resumes. I think that's the first thing to look for.
So parallel means that it's the context of writing it, you to use your word again, similar, so that it's easier for the human to consume it.
Yes. And sometimes there are bullets involved, and sometimes it's in a sentence. You might say, I like kayaking, tap dancing, and tattooing my daughter. I don't know. My mind goes in strange places, but yes.
You mentioned earlier in passing, I think, active and passive voice.
Yes.
We've heard those terms. Could you define those and kind of give us some example as to which might be appropriate in a certain case?
Yes. The passive voice is not wrong. That's the first thing I want to say. A lot of people believe that you should never, ever use it. There is a time and a place. I'm going to explain what the passive voice is and what the active voice is.
Okay.
Why did the chicken cross the road? That is active voice. Why was the road crossed by the chicken?
Oh.
A little awkward, a little backward, a little, indirect.
Yeah.
So if I were a cement company, I might want to say, why was the super duper neato road crossed by every chicken that got near it? There might be some reason that I want to focus on that.
On the road.
It's unusual. And almost always you're better off saying it straight instead of doing that reversal. I am loved by my husband. My husband loves me, right?
That makes sense.
So but marketing people always try to spin those words to make the focus on the thing they want it to be about, and then they make it a difficult statement.
That can't happen. And you know where it happens the very, very most? When people lie. They will say the escrow account was accessed by an undisclosed party, as opposed to I stole the money. Right? There will be this, there is a book entitled Mistakes Were Made. Not I made mistakes. So it's Weasley language often. So
hey, Don brings up a quick point. What is that called? The ellipse, the dot. Is that called an ellipse? And yeah, Larry King.
Don, you struck a nerve, dude.
Larry King used to use those a lot when he would write his column. I use them from time to time, and they like to clean that up. So help me get clean and help others that might be tempted to use the ellipse. What is it, and why do we feel like we need to use it?
I want everyone to know that I wrote an article about this on my website, and I worked very, very, very hard to research it. So if anyone's interested, you could go to shinyredcopy.com and look for the word ellipse, and you can learn more about it than you ever want to know. It is used in casual writing, it's used all over the place. In more formal writing, it is used to signify a break off of a thought. I could have sworn I put the kettle on the ... the sentence just kind of trails off. That can happen. That's an ellipse, by the way, is the 3 dots.
Okay.
It is often used when you are being very attentive and diligent about a quote that you have captured and you've removed part of the quote and you want people to understand that the quote is not complete and you've pulled something out, you'll see it there, and that's proper. It gets into very nerdy typography, typesetting issues about where the space goes or doesn't go before the thing. And so if you want to get into that, please read my article.
I just shared it, Sarah.
Okay. So and in terms of good writing, I would just say if you're writing a cover letter or something, I would cool it with that. I would not, it can't, some people find it annoying. So I would be judicious with your ellipses. That is the plural, ellipses.
You got that, Teddy? Ellipses. It ain't no ellipses, right? So.
And Dean dropped another one in here that I see all the time. My wife is an early childhood education with children with special needs teacher. Mm-hmm. And she educated me on referring to people with disabilities versus disabled people.
Yes.
What's your take on those two ways of saying that?
Well, I strongly believe you should phrase things the way the involved people want you to.
Yes.
No matter how ridiculous you think it is, you do what they say because you don't understand where they're coming from.
Right.
I believe that phraseology, which seems like a subtle shift, is changing from defining a person by a disability or explaining that they are first a human being who has this thing in their life, right? So I am a person with a dog. I am a, I'm a person first, and I am right. So
makes sense. And we have, we've got about 20 minutes left. So when we get to about 7 or 8 till, we're going to ask you to summarize maybe a few key takeaways. Meantime, if you have comments or questions for Sara Rosinsky, put them in the chat. Teddy will keep an eye on that. We talked a little bit about the active and passive. Now let's look at avoiding typos and how that can just chop you down. I mean, even the sharpest tack in the drawer with a typo in there. And I see resumes a lot, and I'm sure you do, Teddy. And gosh, you know what? The rest of the package looks good. But these typos, you're like, wow.
Yeah.
How do we avoid those? Is that even possible?
First, let me say that I make them. No one can avoid doing it. The problem is actually neurological in that we, the writer, knows what we want. No, we know what we want to say. So that's what we see. We already understand the meaning. So we're kind of the worst judge of typos because we're walking around with goggles, basically. And I believe you had Susan Rooks on here, and I'm sure she gave some good advice about avoiding typos. My advice would be walking away from the thing you're working on, coming back to it after you've kind of forgotten it a little bit so that you're seeing it with fresh eyes. I would say from experience, if you find yourself just kind of dragging over a little part of the text and you're not even quite sure why, if you feel yourself just sort of slowing down, there's very likely an error there that you're noticing subconsciously. That sounds crazy, but I have found that to be true. I recommend, now, if you're a professional proofreader, there are tricks like reading a sentence backwards and things like that. So you remove the meaning from it and you're not liable to fill in the blanks automatically. We don't have time to do that for a 20-page, essay or something. And then Grammarly can be helpful. Don't depend on autocorrect. Don't depend on technology. They will stab you in the back, right? It will do that. I recommend, really, if you're concerned, I would hire a proofreader or ask a trusted friend to look at what you've written. It's just so awfully easy to make an error.
For me, one of the things that I'm right with you. I love Grammarly 75% of the time. The rest I know better than to believe it. I also discovered for myself, Sarah, that when I read what I write out loud, read it out loud.
Yes.
That helps me
Yes.
correct a few of my problems. I'll tell you a
Yeah.
few of the ones that I see. Randy sees resumes all the time. I see LinkedIn profiles. And here's the LinkedIn profiles I see. The three big mistakes, two of them are regular. Here's a brand new one I just discovered. Number one, misspelling the word manager. And they become a professional, they become a public or a project manger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The second one is where these folks who we know, they should be paying closer attention as a public relations manager, they become a pubic relations manager. And by the way, the pay scale for those two are significantly different based on different skill sets. I just said that out loud, didn't I? And the third one I just saw, and I swear this person must have had their LinkedIn profile written using spoken word to text, because they said in the content, they said, my role is to provide KPIs to C-level executives, SEE level executives.
Yep.
So read it out loud once you write it or say it, so you make sure you see what you wrote.
I have to say, as someone who worked for Publix supermarkets for many years, that public pubic error of the hierarchy of errors, the obscenities, like the time I saw someone who was a shift manager and they left out the F. That kind of error is a deal breaker, right?
Those are good jobs in the right place, though, Sarah.
So it's not a bad idea to do a search for the word pubic, or do a search for the word manger, or those errors that you are liable to fall into. It's not a bad idea to have a little hit list of things to check.
All right, so you noticed that somebody said manger, pubic, or whatever. So now the question is, do you correct? It's almost like if they mispronounce your name. That's another example where maybe it wasn't intentional, but you don't want to dress them down in public, I would think. But do you have tips for how to kind of nudge somebody along the right path, grammar wise? I get it if it's your name, you take them aside if you want to, but how much, do you break out the ruler and crack them on the knuckles? And, how do you autocorrect people? How about that one?
I personally really avoid shaming anyone or correcting them. However, if I did see a shift manager who had left out that F, if I cared about them at all, if I really, especially if I know them casually, I would message them and say, hey, I think you need to know. It's the same as having your fly unzipped, or, a stain on your, something that's going to really do them damage. You're doing them a service, but do it privately, of course. Never have to do it publicly.
Hey, I got to ask you. So I get this from time to time. And Teddy, I'm sure you've seen these as well on LinkedIn. When someone writes a recommendation for you, and it has typos, it has grammatical faux pas, it is, and I just had this happen in the last, I won't pinpoint the timeline because that may give it away, but I'll say in the last 8 months.
Yep.
I had that happen, and there was more than one error in there. Now, that other person either probably didn't realize that they were doing that, but now that would show up on my LinkedIn page as the most recent recommendation. So I felt, and you guys may disagree, but when I see a typo, I'll message them back and say, hey, could you clean that up? Is that legit to do when it's on your page, you think?
I think you're getting into social mores and how well you know that person, and how they would take it. And I don't think you're out of line doing that. I believe there are some probably errors in my recommendations. I don't remember, but I haven't bothered with it. Again, it's that hierarchy of errors. If it were shift manager going without the F, I'd be more concerned. I don't know. That's kind of
depends.
How your relationship with those people.
And LinkedIn makes it pleasant for you to ask. It makes it easy for you to ask for that.
Yeah.
And realistically, if somebody's going to write a recommendation, then they're probably in pretty good stead with you, and vice versa. So it's not done in a pejorative way, kind of a thing. But it is something that if I see the typo, I will bring it to their attention, because that reflects not only on them, but also somewhat on me as well. So I'd like to avoid that where I can.
So by the way, Randy, before you go on to the next discussion, I just want to let everyone know that I did a search for shift manager without the F. There are 60 people on LinkedIn who have that job.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, so you know what? If we all wanted to be good citizens today, we could contact those 60 people, or not.
Or not. Yeah, that would be awkward.
Now I do, when I run, Randy knows I run a Manger report every year, and I'm starting to incorporate a pubic relations report. And if you're my first level network and I have not told you once, then I will send you a message, say, Randy, check this spelling out. But I will only tell you once, and there are people who are on there year after year after year.
Yeah. So we covered when or whether or not to correct somebody. Here's one, and I see this a lot. In fact, Sarah, I think I sent a photo of it. There's a local gas station, service station that was talking about fixing axles, and what it costs for axle repair. And it was like AXLE''S. We fixed 2 axles, and I think it's called the grocer's apostrophe. So how many times have we seen Apple's APPLE''S?
Yep.
Help us understand when to use that apostrophe, because I think we trip over that a lot.
I saw that the day before yesterday with burrito ''S. We have burritos. The apostrophe gets mistreated oh so often. It gets left out where it belongs, and it gets stuck where it doesn't.
Yep.
The grocer's apostrophe is exactly what you were just describing, where people pluralize a word by adding an apostrophe S, and that is correct in 0.000015% of the time. You really just need to put an S on the end of a word. You don't need that apostrophe. So unless it's an irregular an irregular noun, child becomes children, we know things like that. But
like women,
right?
Multiple, more than one woman is women.
Man becomes
apostrophe
men,
S.
Women. There are those regular nouns, but when you hear the word burritos in your mind, burritos is the right thing. It's just burrito, and then you add an S on the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the same when you get.
Randy, I had to deal with that when I moved to North Carolina. I made a wooden sign to put on the end of above my garage.
Yes,
and it says the Burrisses.
Yes.
Apostrophe. No, the Burriss is home, I think it said. Apostrophe after the S with an S. Burriss is RRISS.
Yeah,
I struggle with that.
So that one, you would be correct. You would be, so you have one Burriss, and then if you pluralize that, you add an ES on the end, Burrisses, right? And then if you make that possessive, you put an apostrophe after that final S.
And nothing else.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I did. I had the Burriss is home with the apostrophe after Burriss.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
But actually, Teddy, you'd have to put an ES.
First
the Burrisses.
First the ES, but then an apostrophe after that.
Yeah, the Burriss is.
So now you're telling me to go take the sign down.
No. I think you did
Change your name. Change your name, man. Change your name.
And I will say too, that stuff, and I have this in the book, that gets really tricky. It gets really tricky, especially with plurals and things like that. Sometimes you need to say it out loud to say, how would I, anyway, that can be tricky.
We've got about 5 minutes left. Real quick hitter on a one or two. The apostrophe for the difference between whose, WHOSE, and who apostrophe S. Let's hit that one real quick.
So again, Sometimes an apostrophe indicates possession. Sometimes it's a contraction of two words. And in
Like
the
it's.
right. So in the case of whose, what you're really saying is who is. So if you can't replace that word with who is, then you want WHOSE. I am the copywriter whose book is named Unflubify Your Writing.
Yeah.
I
So,
am the copywriter who is known for that book, right?
Yep. Teddy, who's our next week guest, right? That would be an apostrophe, yes.
We'll get to that here in a minute.
We're 5 minutes away. Run down a few of your key takeaways for us, Sarah. What do we need to know from today?
I would say that, especially in professional circles, what you write really matters. It is as important as what you decide to wear to the interview. And I would say it's important to remember that your reader is a human being, and do the golden rule. Would I want to read this? Would this be easy? Would I understand it? Would it give me a headache? So I think those are really fundamental things to keep in mind.
I think this also applies, Sarah, to the spoken word as well. You're pretty deliberate when you're about ready to say something. I can see your mind is in, third gear, cranking out hard to make sure you use the right words.
Yeah.
And that applies in an interview as well.
True.
Yeah.
True.
And a lot of interpersonal communication is nonverbal as far as body language and tone of voice and such. But if we trip up on the words themselves, now we've really got some challenge. We hope that we were taught properly, and if we weren't, how can people reach out to you, your book? Are there other resources that you might suggest if people want to do some self-study to try to get their game up another level?
Yes. If you go to my website, I do have some free writing resources, a list there. You'll see it right in the menu. I think that's super helpful. The book, Unflubify, you can go to unflubify.com. That's easy. I am a loudmouth and very active LinkedIn person, as you both know. So by all means, follow or connect with me there, and you'll never forget that I exist.
We don't know what we don't know, and as we learn more, we can do better. And thank you, Sara Rosinsky, for joining us today. Back for a second time, Teddy. We didn't scare her away the first time, so I guess we were okay with that.
I love it when we get repeat guests come back, especially when we can take the conversation to another level. So Sarah, thank you very much for joining us again. I appreciate you.
Hey, Teddy, I have just a real quick story, and I'll throw it to you, and however you want to do it.
And it was a guest.
But yeah, we've got guests coming up next week that we'll share a little bit about. But my mom was a school teacher, English teacher. So I was brought up with understanding now whether I used proper grammar or not was maybe a different story. Now, my dad was a blue collar guy, high school graduate. But he supported that same grammar. So it wasn't as though we had one saying, do this, and the other one says, doesn't matter. But I was brought up being able to write and speak properly. And I can, again, the English language is difficult. And I marvel at, I've got clients who speak multiple languages and they struggle with English, and they'll all say English is the hardest one to learn. And it really is. And I admire people who want to take on another language and understanding what are they called, idioms, and all the different, throw the baby out with the bathwater, all kinds of things like that have no literal meaning in our the actual words, but they mean something based on who knows what from back, who knows when. Anyway, language is a tricky subject, but it can also be a very beautiful thing. And almost like a machine or an artist drawing, you can create images, feelings through the spoken and written word. That's one reason radio is such a great medium, because it's the wording that you can really dig. So Teddy, let me throw it to you. Or how do you want to do this? We only have a minute left.
I got it. So my story is this. I lost a huge contract because I failed to
Yep.
check my grammar, my spelling, including the CEO's name.
Ow.
My boss will never let me forget that. So that was the day I started paying for Grammarly and started paying for copywriters to help me. So that's my story. Pretty simple. Randy, who's our guest next week?
Yeah, our guest next week coming up is Balint Gaspar. And you may not know who Balint is. He is the CFO of SiteSource. So why is he coming on? Well, you know, it's a tight war for talent. And for years, SiteSource, they do techie stuff, Sarah. They programming, software, that kind of a thing, developers, that kind of stuff. And what they do is they grow their own. They interview people and plug them into a class and run them through, I don't know if it's 6 or 8 or 10 weeks or whatever, but they run them through a class. And then what I'll call the top candidates, they take them for themselves. And so it's a win-win, because now they get to see the students progress and the students get to engage with SiteSource. But it's a way to kind of grow your own. And you know what, even if you don't get hired by SiteSource, you now have marketable skills that you can take elsewhere and earn a good living. So it's a new, maybe not new, but it's a different twist on the business model about how you recruit folks. And in this marketplace, recruiting and retaining is a tough deal. So he'll be next week. That'll be on Wednesday, the 21st at 11:55 Eastern.
Sarah, thanks a lot for joining us. Randy, good to see you again. Thank you for everybody to show up. Remember, the Elder Law Firm supports our show. So if you need some counsel on elder care, elder law, reach out to them. We'll see you all next week. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.